This podcast is being brought to you by Trinity College Dublin. For further information, please visit our website itunes.tcd.ie.
Got a kind of a mixed bag really of stuff to present, and I'm going to be talking mainly about the Telecare technology that is currently in the market at the moment, that's currently available. And the focus is the work that the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland are doing on telecare for people with dementia and their carers, and the work we did in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society. Okay, so in 2006, I should also, by the way, credit and thank, in her absence, Catherine Keogh, who was with the Alzheimer's Society at the time that this project started, and left recently to move on to frontline occupational therapy practice. But she and I would have worked together on this, and it was 60% Catherine's work and 40% mine, so I don't want to take all the credit. So in 2006, the Alzheimer's Society accessed funding from the Dormant Accounts Fund via the Department of Health and Children and Community, Rural and Gaeltacht Affairs. And they basically got 200,000 for a telecare project to start in July 2007. And they worked then closely with a telecare provider called Emergency Response Limited. The aim of the project was to assess the person with dementia and create a tailor-made telecare package to augment the existing care plan for that person. And this was with a view to facilitating persons with dementia to managing their risks associated with cognitive disability, and then to improve the quality of life for people with dementia. So before I go on, this field is a mass of different definitions and terminology. So I just want to kind of outline what telecare is and how we're defining it, and maybe distinguish it from some of the other terms that you might hear. So we refer to telecare as a technology or a system that is used to refer to the provision of social care as opposed to health care from a distance. So not immediately, from a distance, a remote location, and supported by telecommunications. When we say telecommunications, we're talking about landline phone connection and also computer connection, and in some cases broadband. There are three kind of generations, as they're called, of telecare, and they're based on the evolution of the traditional kind of social alarm, the pendant alarm that you'd all be familiar with. So the first one is the social alarm that's widely used. So it's a simple telephone unit, a box, a little white box with a red button, and a pendant, or in more recently, people have been wearing their alarms on their wrists as a form of a watch, because pendants carry a bit of a social stigma for some people. The second generation, and this is the one we're working with, is the pendant alarm supplemented with passive or automatic alarms and sensors such as smoke detectors, fire detectors, flood detectors, temperature extreme sensor, fall detectors, exit and entry detectors, and a bogus caller function. And all of these are linked to the box with the red button that is linked to a call centre at another location. The third generation then is the automatic collection of everyday activity data. And this is done through various sensors, again like front door open and closing, pressure mats in beds or in armchairs, bed chair occupancy data, and then these data can be, subject to certain conditions, presented to care personnel or family carers to monitor somebody's well-being. And one of the most frequent uses of this is to try and spot whether somebody's developing a urinary tract infection. So if you notice increased activity during the night and increased bathroom use, that can be used as an indicator for a UTI. Now, it's not straightforward, there are some ethical issues that accompany that, but this is generally the kind of terminology we use. The other thing to bear in mind, and this has already come up through the day is that Telecare is what we call a socio-technical system, which sounds very posh, but basically it means it's not just a technology that stands on its own. It's a system that is laid on top of and hopefully integrates with your traditional health and social care delivery system. So it's not intended to replace health and social care, it's intended to work with it and become part of a bigger system. And this also involves a distribution of roles and responsibilities for care between the people involved, the technology system, and the health and social care organisations. Okay, so to give you a brief outline of the interim evaluation. So after the project was running for some time, the Alzheimer's Society carried out an interim evaluation of the project in collaboration with the Work Research Centre. So they used a mixed methods approach, incorporating both qualitative and quantitative research. And I have to say it was a short evaluation and it's intended to be further developed. So the qualitative aspect consisted of 2 one-to-one interviews and 1 focus group, and these were done with the care coordinators employed by the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland. And the quantitative element then consisted of 56 questionnaires sent out to service users. Now, when we say service users, we're talking about carers of people with dementia who had the technology installed. So out of 56, 25 were returned, which is a 46% response rate. So as you can see, we're not claiming to have a representative sample. But the total number who were receiving Telecare at the time was about 60. So it's not too bad for the population we were dealing with. Okay, and then it was simple descriptive statistics or descriptive evaluation. So I'm just going to present some selected findings, not all of them, or we'd be here all day. You can find the full report of this evaluation on the Alzheimer's Society website. The findings I'm presenting will have a focus on some of the issues that I think need further thought. Okay, so one of the first things we found when we did the qualitative work was there was a problem, and this is a systems problem, in terms of communication between emergency response, the Telecare provider, and the care coordinators in the Alzheimer's Society. So there wasn't information was not being shared between the two in an efficient manner. So it meant that care coordinators weren't sure what was happening on the Telecare side, and the Telecare side couldn't update the care coordinators about any key events, whether somebody had fallen, whether somebody had left the house, anything like that. And there was no feedback on which devices were alerting most frequently, which was very important. Now, what was interesting though is that we learned that the care coordinators had great lessons to bring to us about how they were introducing the technology to people, because this is it's not an easy area, and you obviously certainly don't want to coerce people into it. But they had been successful. So what they said was what facilitated the introduction of Telecare to their client base was, first of all, bringing the information and the equipment physically into the home. So letting people have a look at it, touch it, try it out, see what it's like before they even go near installation. So this is a quote from one of the care coordinators. She carries a dummy pack in the boot of her car, and so when she drives to people and she's doing an assessment, she brings the dummy pack in, and as she says, they just need to hold it and to be able to see it. And if they can see it's just a plastic box and very simple to use, they've been very receptive. So that seems to take the mystery away from the experience. Other facilitators then were trust, and this is talking about the trust relationship that exists between staff in the Alzheimer's Society and the clients, because most of these people have an ongoing relationship with their clients, and also the Alzheimer's Society has a certain brand or image as being trustworthy as a voluntary sector provider. Design is obviously of key importance, and then specific sensors were identified as popular. So the bed occupancy sensor, bogus caller, and the exit sensor, so the sensor that detects whether somebody's left the house. Barriers then to introducing Telecare were again design and stigma. So if it was seen to be clunky, obvious, and very clinical looking, that was seen as a barrier. And the presence of other security and care systems. So this is interesting. A lot of people were relying on Aircom Phone Watch as a substitute guardian system and didn't feel that they needed Telecare if they already had a phone watch or a security system in place. And then also people who already had social alarms didn't feel the need for more advanced Telecare. There was also a fear on the part of carers of causing distress or confusion to the person with dementia. And then there was competition, the old market forces, with other providers of Telecare, because we have a number of providers in Ireland. Okay, so just very quickly, we have the survey results from the quantitative element. 75% of the carers who responded were female, 25% male. Remember, these figures are small when you convert them to real numbers. 36% were daughters-in-law of the person with dementia, 20% were wives, and 16% were sons, but that, again, numbers will be small. And then approximately 2/3 of carers were under 65. So I'm just going to go through a few of the key headline results from this evaluation. Again, what's interesting is the number of people who agreed to Telecare straight away, so did not take time or feel they had to take time to think about it. So when we asked them how long it took them to make the decision to accept Telecare, 60% said that they agreed to it straight away. The Telecare service then, this is an interesting concept. I should explain it a little bit. One of the key factors that's being used to explain the failure of clinical and health technology has been its lack of adaptation to somebody's daily routine. So if you bring technology into somebody's home or into somebody's workplace and it kind of clashes with their everyday work practices and daily life tasks as they've built for their own day, then you get a high rate of failure or low uptake. So we asked the carers, did they feel that the Telecare package that had gone into their homes did it adapt to their daily routine, or did it kind of clash with it? As you can see, 77% of the respondents said it adapted very well, and nobody said it didn't adapt well, which is interesting. Again, the majority of carers felt that their privacy was protected while using Telecare. I'm highlighting this because privacy and the issues about privacy and surveillance are key in the debate about these ICTs and these systems. So it's interesting that this group of people did not feel that their privacy had been compromised. Now you have to remember, we're asking the carers about, in this question, ask them about their own experience. We don't know from this evaluation what the people with dementia felt. Again, stigma and embarrassment. 14% of people, that's very low numbers again, said they sometimes felt embarrassed or a bit of stigma about using the Telecare. And this was mostly to do with if somebody calls them, if an alert goes off, if somebody leaves the house and the carer is contacted, they don't want to put people to bother, so they'll say everything's fine. But then they'll run off and try and find the person who's left the house. So, but 86% of people, the vast majority, said no, they didn't feel embarrassed. Now these are the kind of really important questions when we're trying to assess impact of Telecare, and the context of this is we have a general lack of evidence in the research base about whether Telecare is effective, which is quite important. So on this small scale evaluation, we wanted to formulate some questions to see how carers felt they had been benefited or not. So we asked them, had their caring role changed since receiving Telecare? 27% said it had become much easier. 50% said it had become a little easier. 18% said it hadn't changed. And 5%, which is one case, said it had become more difficult. Now, normally you'd be able to just run with the 50 and the 27% and go, great. But what I'm concerned about is A, the numbers are low. So you actually have quite, be more of an even spread here. And B, what does it has become a little easier mean? That to me, that's something that we want to and we're going to try and investigate in more detail, because that may mean really just not that much benefit, or may mean a little bit more. We don't know. So again, we have to unpick this a bit more. But this is clear. Reassurance, which Telecare really is the key function, is safety, security and reassurance, peace of mind. And you have a big was positive response, about very reassured, 52, and 48% saying quite reassured, and nobody saying that they weren't reassured to any extent. Now, this is another one that we think is important. Going back to what's referred to as the breaking point, the trigger for somebody saying they cannot continue their caring role. And fatigue, stress, inability to cope, as I said earlier, are key factors in this. And one of these is sleep deprivation, which is a real problem. So what we did here is we filtered the results by people who did not live with the person with dementia, and that's blue. Okay, and then carers who are living in the same home as the person with dementia, which is green. So you can see that nobody who lived with the person with dementia got more sleep at night every night. Whereas carers not living with the person with dementia, 40% of them said they did. Again, I have to reiterate the low numbers here, but it's an interesting pattern. Then people living with dementia, carers living with the person with dementia did say 44% said they got more sleep most nights but still wake up sometimes. And then 55% of people living with the person with dementia said the amount of sleep they get hadn't changed. In other research, you'd say that this is down to alerts. So the person may still be getting up in the house, but the person the carer is being alerted by the telecare service that they're being woken up as well. But what's interesting then is the comparison of this with carers not living with the person with dementia, and certainly with a bigger population and a bigger sample, we'd like to explore that a bit more. Like, what's going on in terms of getting more sleep? But it's not a clear picture. Again, accident prevention. With carers living with the person with dementia, that most of them said that the need didn't arise. But you can see that 57% of the carers who didn't live with the person with dementia said that yes, an accident had been prevented on more than one occasion. Accidents mainly being forgetting to turn off the water, forgetting to turn off a cooker, falling, and leaving the house and getting lost. Okay, so now we come into some interesting conceptual issues here. We asked carers, did they think that the person they cared for was aware of the telecare? And 57% of the respondents said yes, they did think that the person was aware. But when it comes to assessment of benefits, it becomes more complex. When we asked the carers whether they thought that the person with dementia's independence levels had changed as a result of the telecare, 88% of the respondents said no. So there's a bit of a mystery going on. There's the next slide then. So the carers were able to identify clear benefits for themselves, but could not identify clear benefits for the people they care for. So this, we have to think about why this might be. And certainly one factor is the pattern of, which has been raised before, the fact that people who enter or make contact with care services with dementia often do so later in the course of the disease. So they're not coming in at the early stages. So maybe they're not able to get the benefit that they might otherwise have got. Maybe they're so far down the road and it's a one-way trajectory and they're not aware of it. But the other thing is that in the literature on quality of life, it's shown that carers tend to underestimate the quality of life of the people they care for. So is this an expression of that trend? That's what we're going to have to find out. So moving on then, I just want to go on to some of the implications of the interim evaluation that we're taking forward in a new project. One of the big issues at a health systems level is the lack of integration and coordination. And this is something that runs through, as we all know, the health system in Ireland. It's an ongoing problem, and not just in Ireland. So we found a lack of linkage between the Alzheimer's Society and emergency response. We found that information wasn't flowing between telecare staff, ASI, Alzheimer's Society, care coordinators and families. So the next step really was the need to develop mechanisms for improving integration and coordination, and also to look at issues of privacy, data protection, access to information and rights. Because if you're suddenly sharing information between two parties about a third party, you're running into issues of ethics and the person's rights and the ability to consent. The other issue that we want to think about is stigma, privacy and design, which is widely discussed in the field, but we were interested by some of the things that were being said. So this quote from one of the care coordinators kind of encapsulates the issue. And they said they don't want to wear them, and this is the pendants. They feel as if they opened a door. When they open the door, it marks them out as vulnerable, which is interesting. Carries a lot of different meanings there. So good design is a facilitator, bad design is a barrier. But there are differences between the ASI staff perceptions of what might be seen as stigmatising and embarrassing, and the carers' responses, which were more positive. Again, we have the big gap of what the people with dementia actually thought, but I'll tackle that in a second. And we also need to explore this relationship between technology, embarrassment and vulnerability, because I'm interested in this link between, is it actually embarrassment or is it a sense of being vulnerable in society, which is more to do with security and what's going on there. I mean, if telecare is perceived as marking people out, that's a real concern, not just for stigma reasons, but for people's sense of safety. So what do we need to do about this if it is the case? And then we need to look at ethics, and Telecare is a really interesting case because it produces a combination of factors that expand the ethics debate beyond your standard research and clinical ethics. It presents a number of factors: automation, surveillance and monitoring on the technology side, and vulnerability and diminished capacity and isolation on the human side. Ethics normally reverts to, or in many research projects, we focus on the outputs of the Belmont report: respect for persons, beneficence, justice, and non-maleficence. So respect is, that's obvious, beneficence is do good, justice, that's self-explanatory, and non-maleficence is do no harm. But we have more complex issues here that we need to unpack in the specific cases presented by dementia on the one hand and technology on the other. We've the ability of people to comprehend the nature of the intervention. So what I mean by that is, if you're bringing a whole a box and a bunch of little sensors and putting them up in somebody's home, is that person able to comprehend the nature of that? Do they know what it is and what it's there for? We need to be sure that people are aware of the nature of the information that will be gathered, because somebody may not be aware that by monitoring your bedtime movement, somebody can deduce whether you have a urinary tract infection and how many times you're going to the bathroom. That may not be clear to somebody. And you can detect, you can make lots of deductions: how much they're eating, what they're eating, how social they are. All these things can be deduced. Is somebody actually informed of that? And avoiding coercion. Now, this is a big one in dementia and care, and it goes back to the power dynamics between carers and people with dementia. Carers may really, really want telecare. They may really, really need it. A person with dementia may really not want it. What goes on between those two people in that dyad? Who is the consenter to this? Is it the person with dementia? Is it the carer? I'm not saying that there's right in one and wrong in the other. I'm saying that telecare brings these issues up to the surface and they need to be clarified. Privacy and dignity then, installation of technology into somebody's own private sphere, the type of data collected, as I talked about before, how those data are processed, where they're held, where they're stored, how they're interpreted, and how they're presented, and who has access to those data. And then this big issue of benefits. Who benefits from telecare as it currently exists in the context of dementia? Is it the carer? Is it the person with dementia? Or is it formal care providers? It's probably, hopefully, all three, but in different ways. As you said, there are different agendas from all these parties. And then again, going back to this issue that family carers reported a range of benefits but didn't feel that the person they cared for benefited. Is this actually the case? Is this true? So this needs to be explored in more detail. So moving on, just to finish off the presentation here, I'm just going to introduce the next kind of phase of evaluation and development of the Alzheimer's Society Telecare service under a European Commission funded project called Independent. This is funded under the CIP programme, which is Competitiveness and Innovation. So it's about improving a service that already exists. So the aim is to develop and pilot an integrated set of ICT services to support independent living, basically. We've got pilots at 6 sites across Europe, if I've counted this properly. Yes. So Dublin. Dublin is the site. I mean, the people will be outside the Dublin area. Hull in the UK, Milton Keynes in the UK, Malaga in Spain, Trichala in Greece, and Geldrop in the Netherlands. Hull is looking at telehealth, which is a different service that looks at vital signs monitoring for people with chronic disease, and they'll be focusing on heart failure. Milton Keynes is looking at e-health and health information in the Milton Keynes area, including people with COPD, emphysema. Malaga is looking at, it's quite a high tech, it's more high level, it's a organisational integration between 2 service providers. Trichala is also working with people with dementia, but they're quite interesting. They're trying to implement a telepsychology counselling programme for carers of people with dementia. And Geldrop are implementing a telehealth system, integrated telehealth and care management system for people with COPD. To focus on the Irish trial then, we are taking the issues that came out from the interim evaluation and developing them further. First strand is looking at improving integration, coordination and benefits, these issues that were raised in the interim evaluation. The key innovation, I suppose, that's being implemented is an integrated system for communicating telecare data and care response information between the 2 parties, that's Alzheimer's Society and emergency response. And the aim is to feed the information gathered from telecare back into care planning and case management. So relevant staff in the Alzheimer's Society hopefully will be able to log into what will be a fantastic telecare portal. I'm sure, I was at the meeting yesterday, it looks great. So this is going to be a portal, a secure server, and care coordinators from the Alzheimer's Society will be able to log into the portal to access information on events for individual clients. And then they'll be setting red flag episodes. So for every client, they'll have an individual set of markers that are called, these are top priority events. If somebody leaves the home. Now for other people that could be not a problem, but for this one person it could be a major safety issue. So that would be given a red flag. Somebody else, it could be a fall. So all of these things. So these red flag episodes will be communicated on a priority basis, either by it's probably going to be through the secure server, to be honest with you. It won't be through SMS because we can't really guarantee a good level of privacy for that. To frontline staff and care managers. And authorised parties will be able to access this dedicated secure platform that contains relevant data for telecare events per client. And then the other side of it is understanding this benefit split, this kind of unusual pattern of understanding who's getting the benefit out of this. So we'll be doing a detailed assessment of quality of life, impacts of the intervention, that's telecare, on the people with dementia. So we'll be hopefully working with them directly to understand their view of how they find quality of life, what's important about quality of life for them, and how telecare might impact that. Now, obviously, we can do that with people with mild to moderate dementia. We'll have to work really carefully with people who are further on in the disease to see what's the best way of communicating with them and getting this information. And we'll also then be talking to family carers. And we'll be combining quantitative assessment using a validated instrument for assessing quality of life with in-depth ethnographic interviews in parallel to get a deeper understanding of what quality of life means for people with dementia and their carers, and what the technology, how they perceive that technology and its effect on their lives. Okay, this is a lovely picture. Basically, what I'm trying to show here is, if I have the pointer thing, the area in black is what currently exists. Okay, so the core service is between the Telecare provider, the Alzheimer's Society is an NGO, care support services coming in from the Alzheimer's Society to the home, and family carers. And then down here we have the HSE element, which currently is slightly removed from the core system. What we're trying to put in place then for the Telecare provider is an integrated communication system between the two, Alzheimer's Society and emergency response. And there's a possibility of looking at bringing in some kind of social connection or social support system into the home later on. And then maybe, if we're lucky, we'll be able to do some kind of coordination exercise with the HSE. So that's basically everything I have. Thanks very much.
Was brought to you by Trinity College Dublin. For further information, please visit our website itunes.tcd.ie.